Thank you. Imagine a world where every person struggling with the disease of addiction feels understood and is seen, heard, and valued. Because everyone believes and understands that addiction is a brain disease and is without stigma, like other brain diseases, including Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's. The American Medical Association officially declared addiction a disease in 1987. The CDC says that addiction is a treatable disease. Imagine a world where addiction is considered a chronic disease that, if not appropriately treated, is fatal, like diabetes and heart disease. And imagine a world where the disease of addiction receives the same level of philanthropy and investment as other diseases, with the same levels of mortality. According to a 2021 study from the Butler Center for Research at Hazelden Betty Ford Foundation, addiction and substance use disorder accounted for over 240,000 deaths in the United States, yet lagged significantly behind in philanthropic investment compared to other chronic diseases in the US that have similar or lower mortality rates. Kidney disease, dementia, diabetes, and lung disease all receive higher levels of philanthropy and investment, yet have lower mortality rates than addiction and substance use disorder. The disease of addiction remains one of the United States' most significant public health problems. Some even say we have a public health crisis. Whether you're here in person or joining us online, your presence is a testament to the power of community and the unwavering belief that we can make a difference together. Working together to eliminate the shame and stigma of addiction helps make the world we are imagining possible. Today, I'm filled with gratitude for the opportunity to welcome each of you to our 8th Recovery Reinvented. Recovery Reinvented began with a simple yet profound mission to eliminate the stigma of addiction. Over the past 8 years, we have seen this mission come to life in many ways, and in ways that we could only have dreamed of. I stood before you 8 years ago sharing my own journey of recovery. Before that, I never talked about my 2-decade struggle with addiction to alcohol or my 15-year recovery because of the shame and stigma. I decided to open up publicly and talk about my addiction story when I became First Lady of North Dakota. In so many ways, my addiction story has given me renewed purpose and helped me find my place in the fight to end the stigma of addiction. I thought that if I could help even one person by sharing my story, it would be worth it. And I thought that if I could provide hope that recovery is possible for anyone who is struggling, it would be worth it. And it has been so worth it. When I told my story, the shame and stigma and weight of all those years of keeping my addiction and recovery a secret was lifted off my shoulders. Since that day in 2017, I've told my addiction story a lot, and have been encouraging others to share their stories to help eliminate stigma. Now, my journey with addiction started when I was in high school in Jamestown, North Dakota. Are there any Blue Jays in here? Yeah, woo, awesome, go Blue Jays. I took my first drink in high school, and I had my first blackout from drinking in high school. I was a blackout drinker from the beginning. And now on the outside, it looked like I had it all together. Like because I had a lot of friends, I was involved in a lot of activities, and I was an honor student. But there were a lot of days when I didn't want to get out of bed and I didn't understand why. Now, I'm a descendant of a long line of Vikings. And let's face it, Vikings pillaged and conquered. In my family, we didn't sit around the dinner table and talk about our feelings or ask for help. We were expected to talk about our achievements, even if we fell short and were criticized. Now, when I took my first drink in high school, I thought it was nirvana, because all the feelings I had that were keep making me not want to get out of bed in the morning were gone. And I just thought, this is the answer for me. But then it turned into a living hell. I struggled with the disease of addiction for the next 20 years of my life. And those years were miserable, mostly because shame and stigma were my constant companions. Now, people told me I should stop drinking. I had negative consequences. The honor student became a criminal with a DUI record. I tried so many times to get sober on my own. For 8 years in a row, I consistently relapsed. I'd get 3 months, and I'd go back to drinking. I'd get a year in recovery, being sober, and I'd go back to drinking. And that continued for a period of 8 years. And at the end of those 8 years, I was suicidal almost every time I drank. I hated the person I saw in the mirror. I hated the thoughts in my head about how I was worthless. And I had undiagnosed and untreated depression. And drinking alcohol, which is a depressant, took me to some of the lowest points in my life. I continued to feel hopeless until one day I was out walking and I was again trying, how am I going to stay sober? How am I going to stop drinking? And the thought crossed my mind, well, maybe I should ask for help for somewhere I hadn't tried before. Now, I didn't have a lot of spirituality and I wasn't part of an organized religion. But I thought, what could it hurt? Maybe someone out there or up there could help. And I said out loud to no one in particular, because no one was around me, I said, I don't know if there's anybody out there, but I need help. And I have been sober since I uttered those words. For me, that was the intervention I needed. Now, that same day, I went out and I found people I knew were struggling with the same things I was struggling with. And I stayed with them because I wanted what they had. They had great lives. They had good friends. They had homes. They had jobs. But most of all, they didn't seem to have that constant feeling of shame. I did whatever they told me to do, including whatever they did to stay sober. And that led me to the journey I'm on today. I've been in recovery from alcohol addiction for over 22 years now. Yeah. And I tell everyone, never, ever give up hope for recovery. Never, ever. Recovery is possible. Over the years, Recovery Reinvented has brought together thousands of people, both in person and virtually, to share stories, to learn from experts and inspire change. And Recovery Reinvented has changed lives. And I know this because many people have told me. They are now publicly sharing about their struggles with addiction or the recovery because of what we've been trying to do here at Recovery Reinvented. Now, many of you have embraced what you've learned here, and you've turned advocacy into action by creating change in your lives and in your communities. You've been focusing on eliminating the stigma of addiction through storytelling. Now, every time I give a talk, and at every Recovery Reinvented, I let people know that the easiest, quickest, cheapest way to eliminate stigma is talk. When we talk about how addiction and recovery have impacted our lives, we're normalizing the conversation, just like anybody talks about diabetes or cancer or any other diseases. The result of normalizing the conversation helps eliminate the stigma, and more people reach out for help, and more lives can be saved. When you all do that, talk about this and share your stories, you are saving lives. With us here today, in this audience and online, are people who have faced the harsh realities of addiction. Yet they are here today as beacons of resilience and courage. They're the ones who persevere, who never give up hope for recovery, and who inspire all of us with their strength and determination. Now, many of you are family members or friends that have never given up hope for your loved ones who struggle with addiction. And you are the steadfast and determined people who do all you can to help those you love. So I don't need to tell you, I'm guessing, about the negative power of shame. There are different types of shame. Ordinary shame can be a temporary response to a specific action. Healthy shame can guide us to make better decisions. And then there is toxic shame, which is a whole different animal completely. So how many of you have heard of toxic shame? A few. So toxic shame is deeply ingrained. It's a deeply ingrained feeling of shame that can have significant psychological effects. Toxic shame is a deeply ingrained feeling of worthlessness and self-loathing. As Brené Brown defines it, she's an expert on shame. If you haven't read any of her stuff, you should. Shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Toxic shame can manifest in various ways in people's lives. Everything from constant self-criticism, having internal dialogue that's filled with harsh self-judgment. Perfectionism, the belief that nothing they do is ever good enough. Low self-esteem, feeling inherently flawed and unworthy of love or success. Depression and anxiety, the persistent feelings of sadness and worry. Procrastination, avoiding tasks due to fear of failure. And sensitivity to criticism, extreme reactions to perceived rejection or disapproval. Toxic shame often begins in childhood, when negative messages from parents and caregivers are internalized. Toxic shame can also occur when children experience neglect, abuse, and criticism. John Bradshaw, who is a foremost expert on toxic shame, says that toxic shame becomes the core of your identity, affecting every emotion and thought. That's every emotion, including happiness, sadness, excitement, joy, sorrow. Every emotion is surrounded by shame. And the impact of toxic shame is profound. It can lead to depression, anxiety, and a host of other mental health issues. For those struggling with addiction, toxic shame can be a significant barrier to seeking help and embracing recovery. Brené Brown's research says that shame corrodes the very part of us that believes that we're capable of change. Removing toxic shame requires a multifaceted approach. It involves challenging and reframing negative beliefs, seeking therapy and building supportive relationships. Practicing self-compassion and mindfulness can also play a crucial role in healing. Toxic shame may have a unique connection to the baby boomer generation. Baby boomers grew up during a time of significant social change, scarcity, and war. And many boomers internalized feelings of inadequacy and failure, leading to a culture where shame thrived. This kind of shame was often passed down through generations because parents were unable to express their own vulnerabilities and inadvertently taught their children to hide their true selves, which is a characteristic of toxic shame. The generational transmission of toxic shame can have lasting effects. In Scandinavian cultures, how many of you in this room are Scandinavians? Okay. Rest of you must be lots of other things. Anyway, I'm Scandinavian. Okay, so in Scandinavian cultures, where societal norms often emphasize modesty and conformity, individuals may be more prone to experiencing toxic shame. The pressure to fit in and the fear of standing out can lead to internalized feelings of unworthiness. I found this saying that I thought was funny, and if you're Scandinavian, you might relate to it. The saying goes, the tallest blade of grass is the first to be cut down. In other words, don't stand out. But toxic shame is often linked to black and white thinking, where individuals see themselves and their actions in extreme terms. The rigid mindset can exacerbate feelings of shame and hinder personal growth. Making eye contact can be incredibly challenging for those dealing with toxic shame. The fear of being truly seen and judged can lead to avoidance behaviors, further isolating individuals from meaningful connections. Talking about toxic shame is essential for breaking its hold. By bringing these feelings out in the open, it helps create a supportive environment where healing is possible. Now you might be wondering, why is she talking about toxic shame? Well, I'm talking about it because after being in recovery for 22 years, I realized that I had all these self-imposed barriers around me that I didn't think could ever be removed. And those barriers were holding me back from being my true self. I felt like I was in a cave, and there was only one way out, and I couldn't find the way out. I read something by John Bradshaw, and he said that healing the shame that binds you requires confronting and understanding the root cause of toxic shame. There were so many things I didn't understand about myself, like why I wasn't comfortable looking people in the eye for very long, if ever, and why I didn't understand why I had black and white thinking. Everything was extreme. And there were so many other things I didn't understand, like why I never felt like I was good enough, why I had a constant stream of criticism and self-judgment going on in my head, why I always felt like I needed to be perfect, but I could never achieve perfection. And I never believed people when they provided me positive feedback. And I was extremely sensitive to criticism. Just ask my husband. Or all those team leaders that gave me performance reviews during my professional career. Well, I was like, oh, that's not me. No, you're talking about somebody else. And finally, I have an answer to the most important thing I didn't understand. Why I have a deathly fear of singing karaoke. Anybody else have that deathly fear of singing karaoke? I marvel at people who can stand up and sing their hearts out and not give one iota of thought about what others think about their singing. They might even know they are horrible singers, but they're up there singing, and they don't care, even if they're in front of strangers. As I was learning about toxic shame, I realized that all these things I didn't understand about myself were characteristics of someone with toxic shame. My parents were baby boomers, and I'm a Viking Scandinavian. Now, my parents did the best they could with what they knew when it came to raising me and my siblings. And I love them both, and they both passed now. Now, unfortunately, their best included raising us with toxic shame. Most likely because they had been raised by parents who gave them toxic shame or created that environment. Now, I'll also bring up the topic of toxic shame because it's so closely linked to addiction. John Bradshaw says toxic shame is a substantial underlying factor contributing to addiction. Side effects of toxic shame create intense feelings of unworthiness and self-loathing and can drive individuals to seek relief through substances or addictive behaviors. This creates a vicious cycle where the shame fuels the addiction, and the addiction in turn exacerbates the shame. Now I have a better understanding of why I am the way I am and why addiction and recovery are part of my story. And I'm sharing this with you today because I think maybe some of you in the audience can relate to what I'm talking about. Toxic shame may be holding you back in your life. But I'm here today to tell you that I found the way out of the cave, and you can too. You can find your true self and be who you've dreamt that, and who you want to be. And in the dream that I've had is to sing karaoke, and I'm going to make that happen. I should probably invite all of you back here and do it right here on this stage. Well, I want to thank you for 8 incredible years of working together to eliminate the shame and stigma of addiction. Your support and participation in Recovery Reinvented is what has made this movement possible. The progress we've made in North Dakota in eliminating the stigma of addiction is a direct result of your grassroots efforts and your advocacy into action in your communities. I want to thank you for your courage, your strength, and your resilience. Thank you for not giving up hope for recovery. I am so grateful and honored to be the First Lady of North Dakota. But more than anything, I'm grateful to just be Kathryn, a face and voice of recovery. Thank you.